So, oh, and with Ayn Rand, her Atlas Shrugged, when I say she does 3-layer books, would you be interested to find out her first 2 books were done 22 years earlier, while in college? You'll see it in there. One is a terrible storm blows this gigantic plane into orbit around the planet. It's filled with communists and scientists, and the scientists have figured out how to grow food and do all these things to survive. The communists take over, everyone's now starving, and they ask John Galt, or the scientist, will you take over again and fix things for us? Yeah. And then the second one, there's an heiress in the United States. Europe is going communism, and she's going over there trying to recruit the most brilliant minds to come to America. And she has a sidekick, Eddie Willards. So Eddie Willards goes back 22 years before Atlas Shrugged. Like I say, it'd be nice if this was creative stuff on myself, but I'm just following facts in my research. So anyway, and one of the striking things about that is Ayn Rand had been proud in the past of being called America's Joan of Arc. If she decided to proceed with Atlas Shrugged Code as her 3rd-tier story, and it was to be uncovered too soon, I fear both their lives would have been in jeopardy. Does AR have the courage to take on Oppie's foes and so forth? Well, if you read page 6 of Atlas Shrugged again, knowing that Ayn Rand has known Eddie as her fictional friend for 22 years, what you discover is it's writing there where Eddie's saying, you ought to do something great. I mean, the 2 of us together. What, she said? He said, I don't know. That's what we ought to find out. Not just what you said, not just business and earning a living. Things like winning battles, saving people out of fires, climbing mountains. For what? What for? She asked. He says, the minister said last Sunday that we must always reach for the best within us. I don't know. We will have to find out. She did not answer. She looked away at the railroad track. Eddie Willard smiled. Now, this is happening on page 6. And he says, whatever is right. Yeah, I said that to her 22 years ago. And it was 22 years earlier she had written the story with Eddie in it. So she's having an argument with her best frictional friend. Eddie won the argument, but at a heavy price. Eddie would pay with his fictional life. Oh, I'm sorry, this is a spoiler for anyone who gets to the end of the book. He doesn't survive. So if mankind could survive to the threat of nuclear annihilation in the 20th century, maybe the American public would be enlightened enough to decipher their time capsule message in the new century if Galt was rediscovered. It had quite a strain on them too. The secret took a heavy toll on both. There's a great book out. It's called Ayn Rand and Her World by Ann Heller. And after I read all the other things, and I've got her journals and there's her letters, as I'm reading this, I'm following along on dates just to see what's going on. A very great book. But it's kind of like if you've been blowing up balloons, that's fine, but if they start blowing up in your face, you start to get a little nervous as you blow the next one. I think she was truly amazed that no one figured out her 3rd message. Because there are some obvious things in there that maybe when we get to questions and answers, we can discuss that. But here's the thing on Oppenheimer's part, which really struck me when I was reading that. And that is, now this is 1946. In 1949, he's reading a book by Henry James, a short story, The Beast in the Jungle is what it's titled. It's about 6 chapters. He was transfixed by the story, and he immediately called his attorney, Herb Marks, to have him read it. The central character John Marshall encounters a woman he met many years earlier, and she recalls him having confided with her of being haunted by a premonition. And the story is how they never tell it to anybody and what happens to their lives. But that shook him up when he read that. And to me, that was kind of a small validation of, I think he had told her a premonition he had, and it was proving accurate. So only after the death did her documents make its way through. So the working solutions to two questions I posed in a different workshop. In a way of a three-tier story. Have people seen this image before? Okay. How many see the old woman? How many see the young woman? Okay. How many see the frightened clown with its hands clenched? A guy was doing this experiment and his daughter came home from the circus. And he just laid it in front of her and says, do you see anything unusual there? She says, yeah, there's this sad little clown with his hands clenched in fear. He said, what? It's in the bonnet. It'll grow on you after a while, but they were making clowns of people at the time, and now whenever I see it, it looks obvious to me, but it takes a while. But that's how it is. You had to have an event like a circus or see something that looked like it to capture it. So the second thing I post, and again, I think this is creativity on my part, but it may be just good detective work, because if something like this occurred with these key words, I speculate Ayn Rand pretty much knew the first 4 words of her epic novel upon possibly either seeing an actual telegram with these words or them being written down some way this way. Because if you take the first letter of each, and so at that point, rather than immediately attempting to explain who John Galt is, which they don't want back then, she just has to change it around a little bit. Who is John Galt? And so I'll leave you with this after that. This is from Ayn Rand and the Prophecy of...
The great oak tree had stood on a hill over the Hudson. It had stood there for hundreds of years, and he thought it would always stand there. One night, lightning struck the oak tree. It lay broken in half, and he looked into its trunk as into the mouth of a black tunnel. The trunk was only an empty shell. Its heart had rotted away long ago. There was nothing inside. Just a thin gray dust that was being dispersed by the whim of the faintest wind. The living power had gone, and the shape it left had not been able to stand without it. His shock came when he stood very quietly, looking into the black hole of the trunk. It was an immense betrayal. The more terrible because he could not grasp what it was that had been betrayed. It was not himself, he knew, nor his trust. It was something else.
John Galt. John Galt.
Who is John Galt? Who is John Galt?
John Galt.
So to me, it seems obvious to me, but I've been working on this for years, that when they talk about, Ayn Rand even said about this oak tree high up on a ridge or hill, and you find the technology at Oak Ridge National Laboratories. So bottom line is, tomorrow, I was just going to put a geothermal system in my home, and I want to know what the best one was. And local data was telling me one thing